A man wakes up on a Monday morning, already late for work. He jumps into his car, turns the key, and nothing happens. The engine won't start. He calls a mechanic. The estimate comes back, $300. Not a huge amount, but he doesn't have it. So he misses work that day, which means he loses a full day of pay. Then the late fee hits his rent. Then the overdraft fee hits his bank account. Then his credit card balance grows just a little bit more. And by the end of the month, that one broken car has quietly cost him thousands of dollars. Not because he's irresponsible, not because he's bad with money, but because he was poor at the wrong moment. And that's the part no one talks about. Because in our society, being poor doesn't just mean having less money. It means paying more for everything. More for housing, more for transportation, more for food, more for borrowing money, even more for making mistakes. So today, I want to talk about something most financial advice completely ignores. Why being poor is actually more expensive than being rich, and how the system quietly profits from that difference. My name is John, and on this channel, we talk about money the way it actually behaves in real life. Not the Instagram version, not the just invest and relax version, but the messy, emotional, very human side of money. Because if you've ever wondered why, two people with the same income end up in completely different financial situations, or why doing the responsible thing still feels like running uphill, or why small financial mistakes seem to follow you for years, then this video is for you. Today we're talking about something economists call the poverty premium. It's the hidden cost of being poor, the invisible tax that doesn't show up on your paycheck, but quietly drains your wallet through fees, interest, stress, and lost opportunities. And here's the uncomfortable truth. This isn't about bad budgeting. It's not about lattes or avocado toast. It's about how the system is structured to charge you more when you have less. In this video, we're going to break this down step by step. First, we'll look at how poverty becomes expensive, using real examples you've probably experienced yourself. Then we'll unpack why the system works this way, from credit scores and fees to the psychology of scarcity. And finally, we'll talk about how to reduce the damage, not with miracle hacks, but with realistic strategies that actually work in the real world. Because the goal isn't to shame anyone. The goal is to understand the rules of the game so you can stop losing to a system that was never designed to be fair. Let's start with something simple. Imagine two people. They live in the same city, they earn roughly the same salary, they wake up at the same time every morning and drive to similar jobs. But one of them has a small financial cushion. The other doesn't. And that single difference changes everything. 1. The price of being broke starts small, then snowballs. When you don't have savings, every inconvenience becomes a financial emergency. Your car battery dies. If you have savings, you replace it. It's annoying, but it's a one-time cost. If you don't have savings, you put it on a credit card. Now you're paying interest. If your credit score is low, that interest isn't 15%, it's 25, sometimes 30. That $180 battery quietly becomes $240, then $280, then $320. And that's before we even talk about late fees. This is what economists call the poverty premium, the extra money you pay because you don't have money. It's not a moral failure, it's math. And it shows up everywhere. 2. The expensive cost of being cheap. Let's talk about something simple. Shoes. A good pair of work shoes might cost $150 and last 5 years. A cheap pair costs $40 and lasts 6 months. Over 5 expensive shoes, $150. Cheap shoes, $40 per pair times 10 pairs equals $400. You didn't save money by buying cheap. You paid nearly 3 times more. This idea is sometimes called the boots theory. The idea that being poor is expensive because you can't afford durability. And it doesn't stop at shoes. Cheap phones break faster, cheap appliances die sooner, cheap furniture gets replaced every year. Being poor forces you into short-term decisions that are more expensive long-term. Not because you're irresponsible, because you don't have the luxury of thinking long-term. 3. The credit score trap. Now let's talk about something even more dangerous, credit scores. Two people want to buy the same car, same model, same price, same down payment. One has a credit score of 760. The other has a score of 620. The difference in monthly payment can be hundreds of dollars. Over the life of the loan, the person with the lower score can end up paying $10,000 to $20,000 more for the exact same car. Not because they're reckless, but because at some point in their past, they missed a payment, or carried a balance, or got sick, or lost a job. The system remembers, and it charges interest on your past mistakes. That's the quiet brutality of credit scoring. It doesn't care why you struggled. It only remembers that you did. 4. When scarcity changes how your brain works. Here's the part most people don't talk about. Being short on money doesn't just affect your bank account. It changes how your brain works. Studies from behavioral economics show that financial stress reduces cognitive bandwidth, the mental space you need to plan, compare options, and make good decisions. When you're stressed about money, you focus on immediate problem. You prioritize today over tomorrow. You choose fast relief over long-term benefit. Not because you're careless, but because your brain is in survival mode. It's the same mental state as sleep deprivation. And once you're in that state, the system becomes even harder to escape. You choose the fast loan. You delay the repair. You ignore the bill you're afraid to open. Each decision makes sense in the moment. Together, they form a trap. 5. The compounding effect nobody talks about. Here's the most dangerous part. The cost of being poor doesn't just add up. It compounds. Miss one bill, lower credit score. Lower credit score, higher interest. Higher interest, less cash. Less cash, more stress. More stress, worse decisions. It's a feedback loop. And the longer you're stuck in it, the harder it becomes to escape. That's why two people can start life in similar places and end up in completely different financial realities. Not because one was smarter, not because one worked harder, but because one had a small buffer at the right moment. Transition to next section. So if the system is designed this way, if being poor really is more expensive, then the real question becomes, how do you protect yourself from it? Not with unrealistic advice, not with just hustle harder, but with strategies that actually work inside the system we live in. That's what we'll talk about next. When money problems change how your brain works. There's a dangerous myth about poverty. It says that people who struggle financially just make bad decisions. That if they were more disciplined, more organized, or more motivated, everything would be fine. But psychology tells a very different story. Because when money becomes scarce, your brain literally starts working differently. Not metaphorically, biologically. Researchers at Princeton and Harvard once ran a simple experiment. They asked people to solve basic cognitive puzzles. Some participants were asked to imagine an unexpected expense, like a $1,500 car repair. Others were not. The result? People under financial stress perform significantly worse on problem-solving tasks. Their cognitive ability dropped by the equivalent of losing 13 IQ points. That's the same cognitive impact as losing an entire night of sleep. So when we say poor people make worse decisions, we're missing the real story. Poverty doesn't reflect bad decisions, it creates them. Scarcity shrinks your world. When money is tight, your brain goes into survival mode. It narrows your focus to whatever feels most urgent. The bill due tomorrow. The overdraft warning. The car that might not start. And when your mind is stuck solving immediate fires, it loses the ability to think long term. That's why people under financial stress often choose high-interest loans, skip preventative health care, delay maintenance, avoid looking at bills altogether. Not because they don't care, but because their mental bandwidth is maxed out. Psychologists call this tunneling. Your brain zooms in on the problem directly in front of you and blocks out everything else. Long-term planning feels like a luxury for people who aren't drowning. Why just budget better doesn't work. This is where most financial advice goes wrong. Traditional advice assumes people have mental space, emotional energy, time to research and compare options. But scarcity consumes all three. Telling someone under financial stress to just budget better is like telling someone who's underwater to just breathe deeper. They're not failing because they're lazy, they're failing because their cognitive load is maxed out. And this is exactly where the system quietly profits. How the system profits from scarcity. Banks, lenders, and service providers understand this psychology extremely well. They design products that look harmless in the short term. Buy now, pay later. No interest for 90 days. Only $25 to get started. Instant approval, no credit check. These offers feel like relief, but they're built on the assumption that you won't be able to pay on time. You'll miss a payment. You'll roll the balance forward. That's where the real money is made. Late fees, penalty APRs, overdraft charges, subscription renewals you forget to cancel. It's not an accident. It's a business model. And the more stressed you are, the more predictable your behavior becomes. The emotional weight of constant financial stress. What rarely gets talked about is how exhausting this all is. Living in a constant state of low-level financial anxiety wears people down. You stop planning for the future. You stop imagining long-term goals. You stop believing things can change. And slowly you start normalizing survival mode. This is why people stay in bad financial situations longer than they should. Not because they don't care, but because their emotional energy is gone. When every decision feels risky, you stop making them. And that's exactly when the system tightens its grip. Why this isn't about willpower. Here's the most important point. If willpower alone were enough, poverty would have disappeared a long time ago. The real issue isn't discipline, it's exposure. People with money can make mistakes and recover. People without money get punished for every misstep. That's why two people can make the same mistake, miss a payment, need a repair, get sick, and experience completely different outcomes. One shrugs it off, the other spirals. Same action, different consequences. And that's not a moral failure. It's a structural one. Transition to the next part. So if the problem isn't laziness, and it's not intelligence, and it's not willpower, then what actually helps someone break out of this cycle? In the next section, we're gonna talk about what actually works. Not motivational quotes, not hustle culture, but practical strategies that create breathing room, even when money is tight. Because escaping the poverty trap doesn't start with becoming rich. It starts with changing the rules of the game you're playing. First, a hard truth. There is no magic trick that instantly frees you from financial pressure. No app, no crypto coin, no overnight side hustle. Anyone promising that is selling hope, not solutions. But there are small, boring, unsexy moves that quietly change your trajectory over time. And the most important one isn't about making more money. It's about reducing exposure to financial chaos. Because the real enemy isn't poverty, it's volatility. 1. Build a buffer, not an empire. Most financial advice tells you to aim for 6 months of expenses, a perfect emergency fund, a fully optimized investment portfolio. That advice is well-intentioned and completely unrealistic for most people. Instead, start with something smaller and more achievable. A shock absorber. A buffer that absorbs financial hits before they turn into disasters. For some people, that's $500. For others, $1,000. For many, it's simply 1 month without panic. The goal isn't wealth, it's stability. Because once you have even a small buffer, a car repair becomes annoying, not catastrophic. A late paycheck becomes inconvenient, not life-threatening. Decisions stop being made in panic. And that single shift changes everything. 2. Reduce the cost of being poor before trying to get rich. Most people try to increase income first, but the faster win is often reducing the penalties attached to being broke. That means eliminating overdraft fees, switching to fee-free banking, paying down the highest interest debt first, avoiding subscriptions and payments that silently drain cash. These aren't glamorous moves, but each one lowers the tax you pay for being short on money. Think of it like plugging leaks in a boat before trying to sail faster. You don't need a bigger engine if you're still taking on water. 3. Buy time, not status. One of the most damaging traps in modern life is confusing status with security. We buy things that look successful, a nicer car, a bigger apartment, better gadgets, but what actually makes life easier isn't status. It's time. Time to rest. Time to think. Time to make good decisions instead of rushed ones. Sometimes the smartest financial move isn't upgrading, it's downsizing. Not as a punishment, but as a strategy. Because time is the one resource you can't refinance. 4. Design your life to reduce cognitive load. Here's a powerful truth most people never hear. The less you have to think about money, the better decisions you make about it. That's why automation is so powerful. Automatic transfers, automatic bill pay, automatic savings. Every decision you don't have to make is one less chance to mess up under stress. The goal isn't perfection, it's reducing friction. Design your financial life so the default option is the smart one. 5. Redefine what success actually means. The biggest mental shift happens when you stop measuring success by appearances. Not the car, not the house, not the lifestyle others see, but by how calm your evenings feel, how easily you handle unexpected expenses, how much mental space you have to think about the future. Wealth in the deepest sense is optionality. The ability to say no, the ability to walk away, the ability to breathe. And that kind of wealth doesn't require millions. It starts with control. Transition to the final section. So if poverty isn't just a lack of money, If it's a system that feeds on stress, urgency, and bad timing, then the real question becomes, how do you step out of that system without needing a miracle? That's what we'll close with. Not fantasies, not hustle culture, just a clearer way forward. There's a moment that almost never shows up in finance videos. It's not dramatic, it doesn't involve a stock chart shooting upward, there's no before and after montage. It's quiet. It's the moment when nothing bad happens. No overdraft alert, no panic when checking your bank app, no sudden emergency that sends your heart racing. And that's when you realize something important. You didn't get rich, but you finally stopped being scared. That's what real progress looks like. The lie we're sold about winning with money. Most financial advice is built around extremes. Make six figures, retire early, beat the market, build passive income. But almost nobody talks about the middle, the long, quiet stretch where most people actually live, where the real victory isn't a mansion, it's stability. It's knowing that if your tire blows out, your life doesn't fall apart. It's knowing you can say no to a bad job, a bad deal, or a bad relationship. Not because you're rich, but because you're not desperate. That's the kind of freedom money is supposed to buy. Not luxury, not status, but options. Why escaping the trap feels so unspectacular. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Escaping financial stress doesn't feel exciting. There's no dopamine hit, no applause, no viral moment. It looks like paying off a boring credit card, canceling a subscription no one will notice, choosing the used car instead of the impressive one, letting go of the fantasy version of your life. And that's exactly why most people don't do it. Because it doesn't feel like progress. But every time you reduce one dependency, every time you lower your monthly burn rate, every time you make a choice that buys you time instead of status, you're quietly regaining control. The most dangerous myth about money. The most dangerous lie about money isn't that you need more of it, it's that you need to look like you have it. That lie keeps people trapped in cycles of spending, comparison, and quiet anxiety. Because when your identity is tied to appearance, every purchase becomes emotional. And emotional spending is almost impossible to control. Real financial freedom doesn't announce itself. It doesn't post pictures. It doesn't need validation. It's silent. And it's boring. And that's exactly why it works. What this all comes down to, you don't escape financial stress by out-earning everyone around you. You escape it by lowering the cost of your peace of mind, by building just enough margin that one bad day doesn't ruin the next 6 months. By choosing stability over status, control over appearance, time over things. That's the kind of wealth that compounds quietly. And once you feel it, you'll never want to go back. Final thought. If there's one thing to remember from this video, it's this. The goal isn't to become rich. The goal is to stop being fragile. Because when your life can absorb shocks without breaking, you've already won a game most people don't even realize they're playing. If you found this perspective useful, share it with someone who's been carrying too much financial pressure alone. And if you want more conversations like this, honest, grounded, and practical, subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.